back, baby.
Offense, you know what to do.
It's football time in Tennessee.
Get this Tennessee.
All right, everybody, welcome in. This is the latest episode of the 1796 Sports Podcast. We've got a special guest tonight. We've got Billy Derrick. Billy, go ahead and plug yourself real quick. I know you're producer of the George Plaster Show.
I am. Yep, producer of the George Plaster Show. A little over a year in Nashville. Goes from Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Basically, what everybody else is doing nowadays. No offense to radio. I mean, George has been in radio. I'm sure I know Ryan knows him, but he's been in radio for almost 40 years. So he's made the switch to just the podcast realm. So I've kind of been his right-hand man and kind of, teaching him how to watch the show and everything. But no, it's been good. A little over a year with that. So it's been good. Of course, football season has been crazy. And then I also on the side cover Vanderbilt for VandySports.com. And I've been doing that here for almost just a few months. So it's been a brutal start for football and then basketball loses to Presbyterian. But no, I'm having a blast. And, football season, as you guys know, is always super busy. But for Vanderbilt fans, I think they're looking forward to baseball season and kind of already kind of sweeping basketball under the rug a little bit, especially with how the season started.
Yeah, obviously the football season I don't think has gone the way any Vandy fans wanted it to. But, that leads into why we have you on this week, because everybody knows what this weekend is. NVF, what are your initial thoughts on Tennessee Vandy?
I think it's just going to be like every other year, to be honest. I don't know. We brought it up before this even started. I actually considered taking Vandy with the points just because of how terrible our offense has been playing. But no, I truly in my heart think it's going to be another semi-blowout. I won't say it's going to be like last year, but I think it's going to be a Tennessee win easily this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, this game for Tennessee, I don't think it's about – obviously you don't want to lose to Vanderbilt, but you're probably going to win. It's more about how do you look after the last two games on offense. I mean, you really need to instill some hope back into the mind of Josh Heupel when it comes to offense. So I really hope that we can accomplish that.
For sure. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, it would be pretty disappointing. I don't think anybody would be happy if Tennessee wins like 20-17. That's not going to make anybody feel good. No offense, Billy. I mean, it's kind of like just expected that Tennessee's going to win that game.
As it should. I mean, Vanderbilt's been awful. I mean, they've only covered one game, and somehow it was Georgia at home. And they scored the first touchdown, and I was looking around in the press box like we didn't even think Vanderbilt was going to score at all. I mean, we thought 42. Something like 42-3. I think the last two games against Georgia had put up like well over 100 points. Vanderbilt coming into that game, it hadn't scored a touchdown on Georgia in like 4 years. And so going into that game, we were like, yeah, this is kind of like the way we're talking now. This is going to be a blowout. But yeah, so Vanderbilt gets up 7-0, and then they somehow cover against Georgia. But no, I mean, I know we'll get into it, but Vanderbilt they haven't shown anything to make anyone convinced that they can cover in this game. I mean, I know 27 is a lot. It's I kind of hate that number because, like you guys said, Tennessee, this isn't the same offense, but I mean, they put up almost 60 against UConn. And UConn's awful too, but I think Vanderbilt fans are hoping it's kind of an Austin Peay type effort from Tennessee. Unfortunately, they're coming off two games where Missouri and Georgia just kind of beat them up, and so I'll be interested to see does Tennessee being beat up affect them much, like in the trenches? I don't think it will, but that'll be interesting because Tennessee was able to run all over Vanderbilt last year. I think they'll try to do that again, but they also hit on some deep shots. So I think if you're Vanderbilt, you got to pray Milton comes out with a bad game. I mean, he's had those, but I mean, Vanderbilt has been everybody's get-right game, especially the last couple of years. I mean, South Carolina put up almost 50, and they're, I mean, arguably the worst team in the East. Of course, you got Vanderbilt, but right in front of Vanderbilt, I mean, that's a bottom-tier team in the SEC, and they destroyed Vanderbilt. So, Tennessee, I think is in that second tier, like with Missouri and Ole Miss, like right behind Georgia and Alabama right now. And I can't imagine, what this game could look like if Vanderbilt doesn't really play with much passion. So, yeah, I'm interested in a lot in this game, but mostly Tennessee. Like, how banged up are they? Do any guys get back after last week? I don't really think it'll matter, but that's one of the things I'm watching, especially like how healthy is Tennessee and how much does that affect them against a team that they should manhandle really no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really shouldn't matter a whole lot, who's hurt, who's not feeling too good. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say I think Tennessee's entire second units are on par with Vanderbilt's first unit. I mean, when you're that, right. Yeah, and I do think that the Vols need to stay focused. I mean, I don't want the players to feel the way that me and normal Vol fan and Ryan feel about it, which hopefully they don't, because Vanderbilt would love nothing more than to beat Tennessee in an otherwise horrendous season. I mean, I don't think it would make you guys feel great about the season, but you'd probably feel a lot better having 3 wins with one of them against Tennessee.
Oh yeah, I mean, historically, like Vanderbilt could go 1-11, and if they beat Tennessee, it's not a good season, but it's still okay. You can say you beat Tennessee. It's kind of the
opposite. It's kind of the opposite with us. It's like, I think 11-1, everybody'd be thrilled, but if that one is against Vanderbilt, everybody's going to be pissed.
Yeah, like Ryan and I have talked about this before, just like the dynamic of the rivalry. Like that's how much Vanderbilt fans hate Tennessee. I think the hatred is kind of like null and void right now, especially with how bad the football program has been. Like it's kind of a non-factor. Like most people have already checked out in football. I mean, for the last couple months, like ever since the UNLV game where they just choked it at the end. People had sort of given up and packed it in on the season. I mean, you could have convinced yourself that Vanderbilt wasn't going to win another game, and they haven't. And I think the coaching staff has kind of packed it in a little bit too. I mean, why wouldn't you? Like your quarterback is only a sophomore. He just blew a few games after he threw 2 pick sixes against Kentucky, and that's a game Vanderbilt like going into the season you thought you had a chance at, and you just kind of blow it. So they had to make a quarterback change, and just. I mean, I could go on and on about the issues of this team and this program right now. And, coming into this season, I think I told Ryan, too, over text, like, expectations were as high as they could have been, I think, for Vanderbilt fans. Like, you go 5-7 last year, and you come into this season, year 3 of the program, with talent. I mean, good players for a school like Vanderbilt. Like, A.J. Swan was a highly recruited guy. You got Will Shepard at receiver. I know Ray Davis and Mike Wright left, but I think they still had some pieces. So I think the biggest thing has just been coaching. They're going to have a ton of changes. Players will leave. Players will come in. They'll probably have a different defensive coordinator, maybe even a different offensive coordinator. It's just been a disaster. And I think I saw today where UConn's head coach Jim Mora came out and said, something along the lines of, yeah, we're 2-9. We're more talented this year, but because of the transfer portal and NIL, like we haven't been able to keep up. And I think Vanderbilt's in that spot too. Like they have to invest. They have to commit to doing what everybody else is doing. I mean, they're paying players. It's pay for play. I mean, you have to admit it right now. Vanderbilt just hasn't done enough of that. So it's going to be a big off season. And I think this game, whether they win or lose, like they need to show some effort. I mean, in the second half against South Carolina, they were an absolute no-show, and that's happened too many times. So I think this is an opportunity for them to show some hope, even if they don't win. Like if they go compete and at least cover, I think it's kind of okay. You didn't get your brains beat in, but if you get blown out, it's kind of the same old like. No zero hope going into the season. So I think this is a game like you guys talked about. Vanderbilt would love nothing more than to knock off Tennessee. And Clark Lee played at Vanderbilt. I mean, he's a guy to go up there and do it. I don't think it happens, of course, but again, like you guys said, it's a Tennessee team that is reeling right now. I don't think that really matters though in this matchup. I mean, they're second tier guys could go out there. I mean, they could start Nico and I think still win, maybe even put up like 40 points.
Well, Billy,
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah, we all want to see Nico start this game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you.
So, Ryan and Jim, I mean, I know it's going to come up eventually, so it's a good segue. Do you guys think we see Nico, want to see Nico the whole game? What are we thinking?
I don't think we see him.
At all?
At all.
Ugh.
Like I said before, the way this offense has been playing, I understand that Vandy's been, bad this year, but you know how Tennessee football is. We get everyone's best every single game, and I think Joe's going to have to be in the whole game, and unless Nico starts, which I don't see happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between what I think will happen and what I want to happen. I mean, I obviously think he's going to ride with Joe. He's done it the whole damn year, come hell or high water. So he's probably going to do it again. But it's like we talked about after the Georgia game. I mean, there's no point in playing Joe anymore because the red shirt for Nico is still intact, even if you play him in the last two games. So that's what I want to see. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's out of the window that Nico starts. I mean, I don't think anybody expects that, but it would be nice if Joe could put up, 35 in the first half. That would be very nice. 35-0, and then Nico just plays the whole second half. But I mean, it looks like at this point, I don't know. I mean, if you don't see Nico start against Vandy, then I mean, he's probably not going to start the bowl game either.
Yeah.
Because that would be his last game,
Yeah. Billy, I wanted to ask you, and I think you alluded to a little bit in your whole spill there. What are some other issues besides, the makeup of the roster that has caused this 9-game losing streak for Vanderbilt?
Well, I talked about the coaching. I think coaching is the biggest issue, and I know you guys, I've heard a lot of complaints about Tim Banks at defensive coordinator. Like every team has concerns about at least one or two coordinators this year. Like this guy should be fired. They need to make a change here. For Vanderbilt, I think they need not wholesale changes, but at Vanderbilt, you need coaches that pull everything out of kids. You need coaches that can look at a kid and go, okay, I see him in 2 or 3 years being an elite, top tier SEC player. Right now, they don't have enough coaches that do that. Like these coaches, if they were at Alabama or LSU, I think they'd be fine. Like they'd be good coaches because they have talent. But at Vanderbilt, like in James Franklin when he was here, he had talent, but it's not like he had 4 and 5 star guys. He took a lot of 3-star guys, even a 2-star. Like Jordan Matthews was a 2-star player. He pulled everything out of him. So I think number one, it's coaching. They haven't done a good enough job offensively. I don't know what they've been trying to do. I mean, it's just been awful. So I think they need to make a change at offensive coordinator. I think they've already made a change at DC. I think they've already fired their DC. And so, there's certain position coaches too that their guys just haven't performed. And like I said, there's talent at those spots. They just haven't been able to elevate them and increase their level of play. Other than the coaching, I think after last year, and you guys probably know this well, the reason they won those 2 SEC games over Kentucky and Florida was because of the two-headed monster. They basically had 2 running backs back there. I mean, Mike Wright, a quarterback who was at Mississippi State this year, he didn't light the world on fire, but he won that Auburn game with his legs. And Vanderbilt, had him last year. They basically turned their offense into a triple option style with Ray Davis and Mike Wright, and it worked. And those guys are gone, and they could never replace those 2 guys. I mean, they totally switched their offense to a more RPO style passing game with AJ Swan, and they have good receivers. That's the one thing I'll say. They have good receivers, but they just have not found enough ways to get their playmakers the football when they need to. And so that has been the biggest thing, just the ineptitude and also the late game coaching. Like in that UNLV game,
oh God,
they had a player that called a timeout with under a minute left in the game. And UNLV, I think, was content to let the clock run and go into overtime. And that's what Vanderbilt wanted as well. But they had a coach tell a player to call a timeout. and stop the clock with like 45 seconds left. And then UNLV said, okay, they stopped the clock. We're going to take a deep shot here. And they had a freshman corner on the edge get beat deep. And that led to the game-winning field goal. And so it's just stupid things like that has plagued this team all season. They've been undisciplined, too many penalties. On offense, they've had false starts. They've had false starts at home. Like that Georgia game and the Auburn game, there were 80% Auburn and Georgia fans at both games. And there were certain plays where Vanderbilt couldn't hear their own quarterback. I mean, his cadence because of the visiting crowd taking over the stadium. Like that, there's certain issues, like deep-rooted issues with the program that have affected this team as well. And so there's so much. NIL as well. I think that might even be the biggest thing. Like they're at the bottom of the very bottom of the conference in terms of NIL and raising money. That has to change. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Let me ask you this. Now, this is a little bit off topic, but it's something that I've seen on Twitter this week. Obviously the financial reasons and being one of the founding members, but would it not make competitive sense for Vanderbilt to move to like the Conference USA?
I mean, I totally get it, and I understand where it's coming from, especially with how bad their football program has been. But I'll say this: I think facility-wise, they have made the investment, right? While everyone else is making the investment right now in terms of NIL, Vanderbilt isn't because they're behind the eight. They're way behind the eight ball in terms of facilities. I mean, their stadium's halfway constructed. It's a 25,000 seat stadium right now. So they're focused on the facilities right now, where everybody else is already focused on NIL portal, getting kids in. So they're way behind. And so, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, yeah, they'd be better suited. They'd win. They'd make a bowl game every year. But, I know the excuse is they're a founding member, and other SEC teams probably wouldn't like to see Vanderbilt leave because it's a win every year. I mean, like right now, they're not a competitive force at all.
Well, that's true, but like, so I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Like, most teams do see it as a win, but do you think even with improved facilities and like a bigger stadium and stuff, I'm not sure what the capacity is going to be after the renovations are done, but do you think that like there are enough people in general? Like, I feel like a lot of their effort needs to be on actually building the fan base.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and that's a real question. Like I said after the Auburn game, that the path for Vanderbilt to improve is almost impossible to see right now because of the era they're in. And so, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, say the stadium's done here in I think 2 years. That next year they'll have that one end zone done, and then in 2 years they'll have the whole stadium will be complete. Okay, I mean, you've got a complete stadium. Then what? I mean, have you progressed as a program? If you haven't, there's not going to be people to fill those seats from Nashville. Yeah. And so, it's the chicken or the egg, though, right? Like Vanderbilt's excuse is, we haven't had the investment to begin with, right? You have to have the investment to win. But Vanderbilt historically has never won at a consistent level. So why would anyone ever give to Vanderbilt? That's what Clark Lee is up against. I think he can succeed. I think he knows what it takes. He's learning a lot. Obviously, it's been a brutal season. And a lot of their fans want a change. They already want him out. But I think that would do more destruction than it would to keep him. Because, okay, you're starting all over again. What coach would, in their right mind, would take that job after coach leaves? You have another round of transfers out. So they just have to fight through this and try to get to that point, at least to the bottom floor, where you do have the facilities. Okay, then you can focus on NIL. And also, you guys know this, Vanderbilt. There's money at Vanderbilt. Like they just put up. They're building new dorms right now. They just put up a massive, I think, science building. I don't even know what it was, but like,
I don't think it's a money issue. I think
no, it's not. It's where the money goes. So
yeah, it never has been prioritized, in my opinion.
Exactly, and right now it feels like winning is secondary there, which is awful. And so they have to make a decision as a university, not athletic department, because I think their athletic department is trying. from the head up, not even the chancellor, but the board of trust has to make a decision, just kind of a mental decision of, okay, we're going to compete. We're in this for the long run. And that's what it's going to take. So it'll be interesting. I don't know how long it'll take. I think in 2 years, the stadium will be done. And at that point, they've got to tell themselves, okay, we're in it. And if they don't make that decision, nothing's going to change. That's what it's going to take.
Billy, you mentioned something there. I was going to ask how are Vanderbilt fans feeling about Clark Lee at the moment, and you kind of just said some people already want him fired. Like, is that a consensus or just a loud minority?
I think it's I don't even know if I'd say it's a minority. I think it's a fairly large portion of the fan base. But you guys have to remember, like Vanderbilt's fan base is like, it's not even close to other SEC fan base. I mean, it's obviously at the bottom. So it's not that many people, but it is for the fan base itself. They've lost so many fans over the years that it's hard to even call them a fan base. I mean, they got an average of probably 5,000 people that go to their games, and so I think for Vanderbilt right now, Clark Lee is the right guy. And if I feel stupid saying that, I don't think he deserves to be fired. I think if in year 5, and that, again, I sound ridiculous saying this, but like I said, if they make a move now, you're going to have over half your team transfer out. They don't want to stay there. They're going to be awful, and you're not going to be able to attract a good coach. So right now, I think Clark Lee has to figure out what the issues are and try to fix them. And if he can, I think they'll be able to get over that hump. At Vanderbilt, everything takes longer, though. It's not like, we're not at Auburn. I mean, if this was Auburn or any other SEC school or even Tennessee, after year 1, they go 2-2. They're a loud majority of their fan base probably wants them out. But at Vanderbilt, okay, you're in year 3. You go 2-10. You're sitting here saying what's going to give next year. I think is huge, but they still that's a tough schedule. They got to play Texas, they got to play LSU, they got to play Georgia. So I think my thing is in year 5, if he is not able to get to a bowl, I think then that's when you can make a change, or they should make a change. But it's Vanderbilt. You got to remember that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good portion of the fan base that's sick of it, because there were a lot of people excited. Like I said, there were a lot of people that thought this team could make a bowl game this year, and for them to be this bad, I totally get the frustration. But it's kind of the sad reality of Vanderbilt. They're not going to make a change. I mean, they extended the guy before the season, which I thought was interesting. I mean, he hadn't really done anything to that point to. I mean,
no offense. That's kind of no offense. That's kind of like winning 5 games at Vandy gets you an extension, and any other SEC school that gets you fired. That's just funny.
Yeah, no, I mean the bar is set so low that, like, if you set that bar at any other school, you'd be laughed at and you'd be fired probably after year 1, going 2-10. So it all goes along with the winning is secondary part. As long as their university is top 20 academically, they're fine. But that has to change for them to compete.
Absolutely. So going to this game, NBF, what's something you're going to be looking for from our Tennessee Volunteers in this game, finishing out the regular season?
I'm hoping a really good defensive performance. I would love to shut them out again. Like you said earlier, I think the crowd, the fans, we all need it. We need this to be a blowout. We can't win this game by a touchdown or a field goal or anything less than, I'd say, 17 to 21 points would be considered a disappointment. You want to go out on a good note, and I just expect the whole team to come around and come together and have a good performance for the last game of the season.
Yeah, 2 years ago, when Clark Lee took his first version of the Vanderbilt Commodores in the Neyland Stadium, they came up with a plan to kind of slow down Tennessee's offense. I mean, they kind of played a cover 3 shell over the top and kept us contained. So we committed to running the ball and throwing short passes. And that's been what our offenses look like this year anyway. So I expect our offense to have that rebound, and I expect our defense to, have some of the frustrating long drives against them. But at the end of the day, I think they'll make enough stops in the red zone for it to be a pretty comfortable lead come midway through the third quarter. So
Yeah, and I think, like I said, other than anticipating Nico, I think like NBF touched on, we just need to have a dominant defensive performance. I mean, if you let Vandy end the season scoring 30 points against you, I mean, it just doesn't look good, and nobody's going to feel good about it.
Yeah, I mean, besides the matchup talk and whatever we do to win the game or look good winning it, I just want to see everybody still committed. I think that's the biggest thing after the last 2 weeks and 2 blowouts. If we come out and don't look like we give a shit, like that would be highly disappointing and a huge red flag going into Heupel's next year. I mean,
well, and that's something we've talked about quite a bit on here, and I think like all three of us kind of don't think that's going to be the thing. Like
no.
All three of us still support Heupel, obviously, and we think he's going to get the team ready to finish out the season strong. But, yeah, I mean, that's another good point. I think the number one key, if I had to give a key for this game, the number one key would be don't overlook it. I mean, don't think, oh, it's just Vanderbilt. I think while, winning this game doesn't really do anything for you, I think losing it or winning it by a small margin would do a lot to hurt you. So,
yeah, for sure.
And then, go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to ask Billy. Billy, what's the game plan for Vanderbilt to have any chance at being close in this game?
Well, I think Vanderbilt has, like I said earlier, I think they have to hope Joe Milton has a bad performance. Like last year, I don't think Joe really – I mean, he had that deep ball to Hyatt early. But other than that, and I think he threw a touchdown late to Merrill, unless that was their backup in the game at that point. But nonetheless, I think they have to hope Milton – he did make some overthrows last year that I think killed some drives for Tennessee. And of course, the game, it was already out of reach for Vanderbilt. But I think, number one, they've got to find a way to get pressure on Milton. And Vanderbilt has found a way to get pressure on quarterbacks. But when they have, a lot of the times, they're not – like their guys aren't big enough. Like the guys they send pressure with a lot of times are their linebackers and their safeties. Like they send a lot of simulated pressures. And so, but that can hurt you, right? It's not like they can't get pressure with 4. So I think they know that. So they have a linebacker, Langston Patterson, who actually played at CPA in the Mid-State, really good player. They send him a ton. He's got a brother on the team too, Kane Patterson, who they like to send. They've got a guy, CJ Taylor, who played well last year against Tennessee. So they have some guys they like to send pressure. But the thing is, like last year, even against Tennessee would just pick it up. I mean, their running backs are good enough to pick it up, and they had enough time with their offensive line. So I think that's the first thing. They got to find a way to disrupt Joe Milton. And then defense or offensively for Vanderbilt, they haven't been able to get anything going like early in games. They've just like so many 3-and-outs to start games, and they've gotten behind the 8 ball. So they've got like I want to see Vanderbilt come out maybe with a trick play or two. I haven't seen like any trick plays from Vanderbilt this year. And so I think if they come out creative, doing stuff they haven't done all year to maybe surprise Tennessee, I think they can do that. They've got receivers, they've got, and when they have punted the football, their punter is like one of the best in the country. So he's been able to flip the field. If they can do that and kind of slow the game down a little bit, I think they can somewhat hold Tennessee in check, but at the end of the day, I just think it's going to be so tough. Like from Tennessee's perspective, Josh Heupel is sitting in the staff room basically saying, guys, let's just do what we did last year. Let's spread them out. Let's run the football right up their throat. And they can do that. They're going to do that, and I think they'll succeed in it. But they also – Joe Milton has to make some plays. Like, say Vanderbilt loads the box and Tennessee is kind of struggling – I think all they have to do at that point is ask Joe, okay, let's try to outrun one of their DBs, because that's what they did last year. I think second play of the game with Jalen Hyatt. So I think they can do that as well. It's kind of a pick your poison type thing for Tennessee. But like I said, Vanderbilt defensive, I think that's where it's going to be won and lost. And Vanderbilt they've been able to create takeaways, but they haven't gotten a ton of points off them. So I think maybe forcing a fumble here or there. They've had some strip sacks. So I think if they're active defensively, creating takeaways and getting points off of them, they've got some hope. But I just don't think they can do enough defensively to slow Tennessee down. I think this is honestly a game that might be low scoring. I kind of like the under in this game because, like I said, Tennessee's offense is not the same offense. They can put up points, of course, but not as, they're not as dynamic and scary as they were last year. So
we're averaging 11 less points per game. So,
it's the lowest points per game that a hypo-led offense has ever had.
Yeah, and so I think I could see kind of a low-scoring affair. Maybe Tennessee leads by a touchdown or two at the half, and then they find a way to maybe cover late. But if we see Nico, that's not a good sign for Vanderbilt, especially in the second half. That means the game's over. If you don't see Nico at all, like you guys said, and like you guys I think predicted, I think Vanderbilt's in a decent spot. I still think they can win with Joe Milton in there. I don't know that they cover. Like if Joe Milton plays the whole game, I have a hard time picking Tennessee to cover.
Exactly.
27's a lot. And I know it's Tennessee. I know it's Vandy, but that's still a lot. But if you see Nico at all in the second half, I mean, hammer Tennessee to cover because that means it's out of reach. And I think Nico's a guy that they'll probably like if Nico goes into the fourth quarter, they're gonna try to light Vanderbilt up and show Tennessee fans what they've got in Nico. So it'll be interesting. I think that the game plan for Vanderbilt is offensively get it to your playmakers, like convert early in the game, slow the game down in the first half. If they can keep it a one-score game by halftime, then you find a way to regroup second half, come out, create some sort of momentum. I think that's the hope. But again, you got to hope for Tennessee to play bad, and I just don't think I don't see Tennessee playing poorly after getting. I mean, let's face it, they got their brains beat in the last couple of weeks. I just think it's another scenario where Tennessee's pissed off, and they're probably so relieved to see Vanderbilt on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, again, no offense, but I think the only way Tennessee loses this game is if they're just totally checked out. Because I don't think anybody that objectively looks at these rosters and these coaching staffs, it shouldn't be close on paper. I mean, 27 points is probably about what it should be. Now, obviously it's not like it was last year, but NVF, I don't know if you remember, but Sampson had a huge game against Vandy last year. So hopefully we see some Sampson this week. That'd be nice.
I just don't think it's going to happen. Why would he? He hasn't done it all year.
Yeah.
I know.
That's a realistic point, though. It's like he's arguably he's close to being our best running back. He's not our best, but he's very close, and he never gets snaps. So I mean, with Jabari being banged up still, they still put Jabari in the game before Sampson.
And Jabari is not explosive. Like I don't think Jabari's bad, but he's just an average. I don't think he's anything special like Sampson could be. But that's something we've kind of gone back and forth on. Like, at this point, I think all three of us think it probably is pretty likely Sampson's not on the team next year, right?
I still think he's on the team. I think I think he knows he's going to be the guy next year.
Well, right, Jalen Wright's probably going pro, right?
I don't know. It's a good kind of question to ask because he might be able to make more money in the college world.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is like, I don't think Sampson's going to want to come back until he knows what Jalen's going to do because, Jalen is completely, talented. He's the best all-around player on our offense, but, Sampson deserves his too. So he might want to go to, I don't know, just some random – he might want to go to a TCU or, some school that, like, he'll definitely be the bell cow next year. I mean, I don't know.
The thing that concerns me about Sampson and his future with Tennessee is that if y'all remember, Jalen Wright was thinking about transferring after last year. Mm-hmm. And Dylan Sampson's gotten way less reps than Jalen Wright did in 2022. So, and that's another reason that I think Jalen Wright's probably gone is that if he wanted to leave last year and he's had a terrific season this year, he's going to finish with over 1,000 yards and lead the SEC in yards per carry. So he's probably going to be gone. He's probably going to get drafted first 3 rounds. So I would imagine he's gone, and that would mean Sampson would stay. But if he stays, if Jalen Wright does decide to stay, I really don't see Sampson sticking it out.
Well, you know what? I just thought about something too. It's senior day, right? So
yeah,
Sampson's probably not going to sniff the field.
Well, and think about the conversation y'all are having. Like, those are 3 running back. Those are 3 of the best. Like, that's probably the best running back room in the conference. I mean, you got Dylan Sampson is the 3rd string running back, and I mean he would easily start at Vanderbilt. He'd probably start at a lot of other lower level.
To
SEC
be fair,
schools.
I think he would. I mean, to be fair, I think he would start at probably 8 SEC schools.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's the kind of conversation that Vanderbilt isn't even close to having, and that's the difference between these 2 teams. Like, the 3rd string running back would start at half the other SEC schools, maybe over half. Vanderbilt only has probably 3, maybe 4 guys that would even start on other SEC schools. And they're mostly on defense. Like, they've got some players on defense, but like offensively, they're inept. Like, Will Shepard's a guy that I think he would actually do really well in this Heupel offense, but he's at Vanderbilt, and they have no clue how to get him the football. That's the difference. That's the biggest difference between these 2 teams. The conversation y'all are having right now about the running backs, Vanderbilt has not been able to have that conversation ever. I mean, it's a great problem to have. And so for Vanderbilt, they don't become close to the level of talent that Tennessee has, even in a bridge type year for Tennessee. I mean, let's face it, like Tennessee, going 8-4, they got a chance to finish 9-4. Last year they were a top 5 team in the country. So this is a bridge year for Tennessee, but they're still, I mean, beyond more talented than Vanderbilt. So that's kind of the bottom line. That's like the not silver lining, but that's kind of the essence of this game that we're talking about.
That's a great point, Billy. I wanted to ask you, besides Will Shepard on offense, and I think you just kind of answered my question, is there anybody that Tennessee is really needing to be game planning for?
Well, they got a receiver, London Humphreys. He was the guy that scored that. It was a quick slant touchdown, about 50 yards to start the game against Georgia. He's got legit speed. He's 6'3", 190. I think he's being poached by a lot of other SEC schools. Freshman, just like a speedster type guy. Like, he's kind of a Ladd McConkey type, but I think even faster and more athletic. So he's a guy to watch. I think Vanderbilt's going to want to get him the football a lot. So keep your eye on number 83, Humphreys, for Vanderbilt. Also, they got a guy, number 85, another freshman, Junior Sherrill, another guy from a local high school, Lipscomb Academy, played under Trent Dilfer. He's a guy that is another good receiver. And then other than that, though, offensively, the running backs are okay. They've got a couple of good freshmen back there that they like. But other than those, like, 3 receivers, Shepard, Humphreys, and Sherrill, they've got Jade McGowan, number 6. He's small, but he's really fast. He's quick. So I think Vanderbilt, they're going to try to get the ball to those guys. Those are their playmakers. The question is, can they? I don't think they can consistently enough, but those are the guys. I'd say those 3 or 4 receivers are the guys to watch. Number 6, number 85, 83, and I think Shepard's number 14, I want to say. But yeah, other than that, they don't have any tight ends. They don't have any running backs. Their offensive line's terrible. And other than offense, like on defense, like I said, CJ Taylor, number 1, he's a freak. He's a really good player. I think he would probably start at Tennessee. And they've got Langston Patterson's another kid, number 10, who they really like, good linebacker. But like I said, guys, that's really it. I mean, they've probably got 5 guys that could start at other SEC schools. Their punter is one of the best in the country. He would start.
That's pretty important for Vanderbilt.
Yeah. And so they've got special teams covered. It's a good special teams unit. But when your special teams unit is the best unit on your team, that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, though, that you mentioned a receiver because, as we all know, that has been the absolute bane of our team since Kamal Hadden went down, is we can't cover anybody. I mean, Yeah, it's bad. Our secondary has been absolutely atrocious. Which, speaking of our secondary, NVF and Ryan, did y'all see the news today about the Nico Slaughter getting arrested?
Oh yeah, like realistically, I don't think anyone cares, to be honest. Like,
Yeah, I don't really give a shit.
it's not like he's doing much anyway.
Yeah, so he's probably going to be off the team.
Let me ask, what do y'all like? Do y'all like Gabe Judy Lally?
No.
I don't mind him. I don't mind him.
Average. He's slightly above average. He's a solid player, but you
the
need more
best.
than
He's the best of a bad group that we have.
yeah. If your best cover corner is slightly above average, you're probably going to have a pretty terrible secondary. I mean, I don't.
It's funny. He was an average player at Vanderbilt, and then he transferred to BYU, and then I couldn't believe he transferred to Tennessee. I mean, he's not awful, but he's just not. He's not. I don't think he's really SEC level. I mean, he could start, like he would start at Vanderbilt easily, but I like that's the only thing that would maybe scare me if I'm a Tennessee fan. I'm not saying Vanderbilt's going to light up Tennessee through the air because they really don't have a quarterback or an offensive line that can even get their guys the ball. But if they find a way to do that, I think that's an avenue for Vanderbilt potentially. Like you guys said, Tennessee secondary has struggled. I think if you're Vanderbilt, look at the Missouri film. Look at what Brady Cook and Burton and those guys did, especially with Cody Schrader. Vanderbilt doesn't have quite those weapons, but they've got some dudes at receiver. So that's the only way. I think if Tennessee's secondary doesn't come to play, which, I mean, like you guys said, they've done that a lot, that's the only chance I think I give Vanderbilt in this game, kind of finding ways to get their receivers the ball. But yeah, it's interesting. I noticed Judy Lally was on Tennessee, and he's a guy that played at Vanderbilt, I think, a few years ago. Also, I guess you guys saw Coach Mason or Derrick Mason's calling the game.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I actually like him as an announcer quite a bit.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I saw him at SEC Media Days, and we talked a little bit about Vanderbilt, his career there. And Vanderbilt people still have a pretty good deal of respect for him because, I mean, as you guys know, beat Tennessee 3 times in a row. I know Tennessee was down, but I mean, Coach Mason did something that no other coach at Vanderbilt has ever done, even James Franklin. So
no, yeah, I mean, I don't think you can. Yeah, we were bad, but I don't think. I mean, he beat the team that had Alvin Kamara and Josh Dobbs.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I mean, that's an accomplishment, regardless of Tennessee. As Tennessee fans, we don't think it should ever happen. So the fact that he did it 3 times in a row, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing him on the call. I think that's the best guy to have on the call. I think he recruited Judy Lally to Vandy, and he still. I think he still has relationships with some of the Vanderbilt players because there's still some of his recruits on the team. So I'm looking forward to hearing like his perspective. I'm sure they'll bring up highlights and stuff of him, beating Tennessee. But he's gotten better too. I don't know if y'all have listened at all, but I didn't think he would do very well. I mean, no offense to him. I like him a lot. He's a nice guy, but I think he's turned into a decent announcer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can tell like who played and who coached because usually they're just better at announcing. I mean, everybody loves Tony Romo. I mean, he says some weird shit sometimes, but for the most part, the guys that have actually played, I appreciate that insight. So are you guys ready to go into the score predictions? Obviously, we'll start with NVF.
I mean, like I said, prediction wise, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, Billy hit the nail on the head. I mean, Tennessee's been playing absolutely terrible the past 2 weeks, and like I said, Vandy could come in. Vandy's coming to play. I mean, we've said this about other teams that people play great against Tennessee. I don't know what it is about us, but people just hate us all around, especially Vandy. So with that being said, I think this game's going to be a lot closer than we all want it to be. I think Vandy's going to put 21 on the board, and I think Tennessee wins this game, but I think we only score maybe 28 or 31.
Wow.
Ryan?
Yeah. I mentioned the 2021 matchup earlier. I kind of see that type of game where Tennessee has like a 2-score lead at halftime, and they come out in the second half and put a few more scores on the board. And then Vanderbilt has, some moments in the third quarter where they try to make it a game, but then Tennessee finishes it off with a long drive. So, and Billy alluded to it, if Vanderbilt's receivers can get loose, it could be a very frustrating game, but I don't see that having a big enough factor on the game to make a dent on the scoreboard that will be relevant. So I'm going to go with the Vols 42-17.
Yeah, I'm like you, Ryan. I think, like you said earlier, Bryce, I think, or maybe it was you, NVF, like Vanderbilt's going to come to play. But is Vanderbilt coming to play going to be enough? like Vanderbilt coming to play, yeah, that means maybe their defense creates some takeaways and maybe they play better overall. But I still think, like in Josh Heupel's mind, he wants to cover. Like he doesn't want to have to hear from Tennessee fans saying we couldn't cover against Vanderbilt. We looked bad. We're awful. Where are the points? I think Heupel's going to want to score. He did that last year, put up almost 60, and this is, I think, a worse performing Vanderbilt team. I mean, obviously they're 2-9, so I'm with you guys. I mean, overall, I think Vanderbilt gets close to covering. I just don't see Vanderbilt's only covered once, and it was against Georgia, I know, but they just, like last week is a perfect example of, you're at South Carolina. That's a team you can compete with. I mean, that should have been, 28-17, 28-21, at least something like that, a little bit closer. They just packed it in, man. So I think I could see a scenario where it's somewhat within reach at halftime, but Tennessee gets out early. Vanderbilt's been awful in the middle eight in games. They've been terrible to end first halves, and they've been awful in the third quarter. I look at the third quarter as a chance for Tennessee to really put it on, and then maybe you see Nico in the fourth quarter. I'm going to go a little bit higher than Ryan. I'll go 45-17. I think Tennessee puts on a lot in the fourth quarter. They end up covering mainly because Vanderbilt has sort of packed it in. And I think, like I said, if once anything bad happens, like say Tennessee scores a deep touchdown early and then they get a pick six or something, this team's packing it in. Mentally, they're like, okay, we're not even coming close in this game. I could see that happen. I could easily see Vanderbilt covering too. I just don't think it happens. Like I said, I'll take Tennessee 45-17 to cover. That might have hit the over there, even though I liked the under, but who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of says a lot about the current state of this team now, like whether or not the three of us obviously have battered Vol syndrome. Like, there's no denying that. If you go back and listen to our previous episodes, all of us were always pretty, other than like the Georgia and Bama game, the three of us were pretty like optimistic about the score predictions. And in this one, all three of us are kind of like, yeah, whatever, like we're not going to kill them or anything. I think in this game, honestly, it just has the feel of a game where Vandy probably gets 10 points, 10, 13 points. Tennessee gets 30, 31, something like that. I would see that. I would not be surprised at all if Vandy covers. I just think Tennessee's going to do enough to win the game. It'll be a lot like the Austin Peay game, probably. I mean, the Austin Peay loss doesn't look too bad now, by the way. Austin Peay, they didn't lose a game. Austin Peay did not lose a game after the
That's
Tennessee.
A good team.
Yeah, like they're in the FCS playoffs. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a very similar kind of game. Honestly, I think Vanderbilt is going to be, feisty. I think they'll be annoying and they'll hang around. I don't think it'll get to like the embarrassing level or anything. I think they'll put up a better fight than UConn did.
There you have it.
All right. Anything else y'all have about this coming up game?
No, my mind's stuck on this Purdue game that's about to start.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, yeah. We'll get back into the basketball shortly. We'll have to have Billy on for the vaunted Tennessee and Vandy basketball matchups. Yeah,
the first one I think is in Nashville on a Saturday night, 5:00 tip-off. I'm excited about that one, especially with how last year's game went. Kind of like I don't know who expected that one. Vanderbilt to just pull
Well,
up.
it kind of makes a difference, I think, because when you have like in football, everybody kind of knows that a Vanderbilt, when they're playing in Nashville against Tennessee, it's not really a home game for Vanderbilt. It's Billy. I mean, would you say it's probably 60-70% Vols fans on football?
Oh yeah, I mean last year, Vandy actually had more fans last year than I thought they would at home. But yeah, I mean it was probably at least 70% Tennessee fans last year.
Well, that's not really as much of a problem in basketball. So
No, yeah, you're right. I mean Memorial Gym is a huge asset for Vanderbilt, and like no one wants to play there, and it's like Vanderbilt could be mediocre in a basketball season, but they're still, at home they're still tough because it's such a weird gym. I mean, who wants to sit on the baseline for your bench, So, I'm excited. Even though Vanderbilt has struggled this year, I think there's more hope in basketball this year than people think right now. And once they get into SEC play, I think they'll be better. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'll definitely be willing to hop on for that.
Hell yeah. Hey, one last thing before we go, Billy. Do you remember me and you on the way back from Cookeville smoking cigarettes, and I got you to sing Rocky Top?
I do. That was that's why I actually like the song. Like
Closet ball fan.
I think it's more of a I think it's like the people say, oh, it's the state song. Like I genuinely like the song. I mean, like I'm probably gonna get crucified for saying that, but like it's a catchy song. I know it's annoying as hell for most fan bases, but I mean, I like it. I think it kind of represents like you're from the state of Tennessee, even though I grew up going to Vanderbilt games. But yeah, that was fun. I miss working over there.
Yeah. Well, I think you're in a better spot now, man. So
yeah, I appreciate it. I love what y'all are doing, guys. Thanks for having me on.
No problem, man.
And y'all check Billy out. Is there anything you want to plug, Billy?
Yeah, I'd like to plug like later this week, I've got Adam Sparks on the Vandy Sports Podcast. We do a preview pod before every football game. He actually covered Vanderbilt for a while for the Tennessee, and he's covering Tennessee now for Knoxville News Sentinel. I'll have that podcast out probably at some point on Friday. So I think it's a good listen. We talk a lot about Tennessee and how much of Nico we'll see, a lot about what we talked about, but y'all ought to listen to that. Get your fans to listen to that. Check that out. Talk about the matchup, talk a lot about Tennessee. So I'll plug that. And like I said, George Plaster Show, check us out. We talk a lot of Tennessee. We have Tony Basilio on every Tuesday, who is awesome. So 2 to 4 p.m., Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Check us out. Like we said, we talk a lot of Tennessee. So I'm sure a lot of y'all's listeners would like to check that out.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, man. Yeah, we really appreciate it and looking forward to this game.
Looking forward to it, guys. Y'all have a good Thanksgiving.
See you too. Go Vols, baby.
Go Vols.
Go Vols.